Amazing. Welcome all. It's incredible to see the number of you joining us skyrocket as I watch this number grow. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, I think that we will get started. So everyone, if we don't have the pleasure to know each other yet, my name is Anna Smith. My pronouns are she, her. And I have had the great privilege of working with Scott for the past 8 years at Venture for Canada, as we've worked to advance the entrepreneurial skills and mindsets of young Canadians in the face of a rapidly shifting world. It was no surprise to me to hear that Scott was writing what is now a quickly respected and celebrated book, one that was previously #1 in the business mentoring and coaching category and is now #1 in career advancement and professional development on Amazon. A book that has been endorsed by prominent authors, including Eric Ries, author of The Lean Startup, and by entrepreneurial leaders like Michelle Romanow, co-founder of ClearCo and A Dragon on CBC's Dragon's Den. And of course, the book has generated the support of incredible Canadians like the three who join us today, who Scott will introduce once he begins. We have set this event up in a webinar format, which means that as an attendee, you will not be able to share your video or unmute yourself, though we encourage you to share your questions via the Q&A button found at the bottom of your toolbar. We will review as they come in and will answer your questions as time allows. So I know that this book will generate many incredible conversations across the country, and I am excited to welcome you all to this one today. With that, I will hand things over to Venture for Canada's CEO and founder and author of The Uncertainty Advantage, Scott Stirrett. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much for the very kind words, Anna. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to interview a fantastic panel of folks who played a really important role in the development of the Uncertainty Advantage. And I'm going to briefly introduce them, and then we'll dive into the panel itself. First, I'm excited to introduce Amanda Lang, Chief Financial Correspondent at CTV News. Second, I'm excited to introduce Gorick Ng, who is the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of The Unspoken Rules. And lastly, I'm excited to introduce Janet Bannister, founder and managing partner of Staircase Ventures. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks.
To get things kicked off, and the opening question I have today is, what's one piece of advice you'd give a young person navigating uncertainty today?
Who do you want to start?
Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'm happy to jump in. And I guess the first thing I would say, and it's why I love the book, and why I'll give the book to young people, but actually even not just young people. I know that that was your target, but when I read it, Scott, I think I said this to you. I feel like this actually stretches well into middle age where people can still learn some of these skills. And to me, the first most important thing is to actually accept. There's sort of a level of acceptance that there's going to be uncertainty in our lives. And I think that's more true now, wherever you are, at whatever stage of your career, than we've seen in recent memory, right? There's a lot of change headed our way. So this idea that that is going to be our environment, and you do need tools, but that kind of acceptance of it and then learning to embrace it is like the graduate level. But just step #1 is it's here, folks. It's not really up to us.
I love that, Amanda. Please, Janet.
Okay, great. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is you're not supposed to have all the answers right now. When I speak to young people at universities or recent graduates, they feel as though they need to know what their career is going to look like for the next 20 years. And yeah, I would actually argue you're not supposed to know, because by not knowing, you leave yourself open to discovery and to adventure.
Totally.
And I think that what I would encourage people to do is get a job, do something, or start your own business, or get involved where you are learning, you're growing, and you're building your track record. And from there, it's just the steps or building blocks, and one will build to another. And part of the fun is not exactly knowing where you're going.
Love what Amanda and Janet have mentioned. I'd say perhaps as a step three to this is to focus on your strengths. If I think about where Michael Phelps ended up as an Olympian, I don't think we would necessarily know his name if he competed not in swimming, but in figure skating. And all of us have a strength. School doesn't necessarily allow us the chance to hone in on our strengths because the reality of school is that you have this report card and you're supposed to be good at chemistry and biology and math and history and everything in between. And it can be demoralizing to get a mark that isn't what you had expected. And it can be a downer to think, maybe this really wasn't meant for me. And the reality is, just as Michael Phelps probably wouldn't be a figure skater, we all have weaknesses. It's important to patch up those weaknesses, especially if they happen to be career deal breakers. But it's also just as important to be focusing on your strengths and identifying those strengths to begin with.
I agree. Focusing on your strengths rather than focusing on your weaknesses, I think, is really important advice in terms of uncertainty, but also navigating your career in general. And a second question I would love to ask you folks is, can you share a time when uncertainty led to an unexpected growth in your career? And maybe this time we can start off with Janet.
Oh, great. Yeah, so much. I think like I'll give an example of when probably the biggest sort of single transformation in my life was when I was working in Toronto at McKinsey, and I ended up moving to Silicon Valley and joining eBay. And I think the uncertainty was I had been at McKinsey for about 4 years as a management consultant. And I realized that I didn't want to stay there forever. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew there was this technology wave that was coming. And more than a wave, it was like a permanent shift. And I thought, Janet, you don't have a technology background. If you want to be relevant in business long term, so this is for perspective, this is like 1999, 2000. And I said to myself, Janet, if you want to be relevant in business, you need to learn technology and you need to get into a place where technology is the default. And I thought I should move to Silicon Valley. So, really didn't know anything other than that. It was almost like, I was just sort of like in my own lane, and then I realized maybe like I was in the wrong pool. So I think in the analogy, and I was like, okay, I got to jump over there. Don't know anybody, don't know how to get there, don't really have the skill set, but I know that's where I need to go. And so it was I guess, a level of uncertainty, and not knowing what to do. But I just sort of like, I guess, continue the analogy, jumped in, plunged in, and was able to find a job in Silicon Valley at eBay and just embrace the unknown. Embraced, I don't know anybody there. I don't know anything about technology, but you know what? This is going to be an adventure.
If I can pick it up from that, because I bet it's one thing that Janet and I will say we had in common is the benefit, and people rarely think of it this way, but the benefit of not knowing. And what an advantage that can be. And I say that because, and I also, when you get to a stage of your life where you realize, oh, I must be old because people are coming to me for advice about their lives and careers. This happened a long time ago, by the way. The thing that happened to me was I trained as an architect. I always intended to be an architect. It was my dream. And then I realized I was going to be a bad architect. And I wasn't prepared to do that. And so I had to sort of figure out journalism wasn't in the plan. Business journalism wasn't the plan. I didn't have any business background when I started as a business journalist. The benefit of that was I didn't know anything and I didn't feel apologetic about it. How on earth would I know how to be a journalist because I'd never done it? So I've carried that to this day where not knowing is my ace in the hole and not thinking I should and not having ego around it. It's just kind of like, of course I don't know. Tell me everything that you know because I don't know anything. And I bet it was the same, right? You land at eBay and you're like, why would you know anything about technology? It ends up being your secret strength because you're not afraid to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Similar to Amanda and Janet, I've dabbled a lot, both in my head and physically. If I think back to my dream jobs since the beginning, I wanted to be a bus driver. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to work in a nonprofit. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be an investment banker. I wanted to be a CEO. I wanted to be a teacher. I've lost count of the number of dream jobs that I've had since I was little. And each of those times I sort of realized along the way, number one, well, it was not necessarily what I was interested in or what I was good at. But moreover, as I got a chance to dabble more in terms of shadowing people, interning, talking to people, I had a better sense of what I wanted to do. And it was all a matter of taking these small experiments, experiments in the form of just chatting with people, taking a class, trying it out as an internship. And very quickly I realized, the world is maybe nudging me towards this direction versus this other one. Like Janet, I was also a management consultant. And at the time, I sort of knew what I wanted to run away from, but not necessarily what I wanted to run towards. Moreover, I didn't have a clue of what I should be doing next. And a mentor actually came up to me and mentioned that I should think about the world in terms of STEEP, STEEP, to be thinking about what social trends exist, technological trends exist, environmental trends exist, economic trends exist, and political trends exist. And I still actually do this to this day, where I think in terms of if then. So if this is going to happen and continue to happen, then we might expect that this might be the result of that trend. And it's actually quite interesting. I was digging back through my spreadsheet from, I want to say 2016, where I did the steep analysis over the course of 300 rows. And some of those have come true. A lot of them have not come true, but it was all a matter of taking a bet on a trend. And when I think about our careers, not to pick on Janet here, but as a venture investor, you have the advantage of having a diversified portfolio of many different bets. If you're taking a job, you have one bet and you have to really bet thoughtfully. And in many ways, you have to think as if you were a venture capitalist, as if you were Janet, but to be doing so in even more of an intentional way, because it's going to be what you'll be doing for the next little while.
Really great advice from all of you. And as one line I quote in the book from Annie Duke, life is a series of bets. And the more I think that we embrace that, the more we can thrive. In many ways, our brains are hardwired to fear uncertainty, and it often requires a lot of resilience to deal with a world that is increasingly volatile. What is a mindset or habit that helps you build resilience when the path ahead isn't necessarily clear?
So I think, I mean, I love what you said around like, hey, it's a skill set. It's so sometimes I think, and this applies to resiliency, but also other things that um I'm trying to develop that maybe I challenge that are personally challenging for me, is I think about them like a muscle. And so I think, hey, Janet, like, you know what, you need to do it, not you need to deal with this resiliency, and not only by building your resiliency or dealing with this complex challenge or dealing with having a really difficult conversation with somebody. This is not just about, hey, getting through it, but you're actually going to develop skills which are going to make you better next time. Right. And so I think about it almost like a bicep curl, right? And so it's like, and just that framing for me helps me a lot in terms of dealing with it, because then it becomes, okay, you know what? This is not just something I need to do, but I know that I'm going to be better at this next time. And so thinking about it as, hey, I need to be resilient. I need to be, I need to get comfortable with change. So every time that I encounter change, this is an opportunity for me to build that skill set.
I can jump in here.
Sure.
One of the bicep curls that I found myself doing is LinkedIn research. Whenever I come across somebody that I'm intrigued by, that I'm interested in, I immediately find myself wondering, how did they get to where they are today? And so I'll hop onto Google. Sometimes I'll use AI nowadays, or I'll go onto the Wikipedia profile. I'll definitely go onto the LinkedIn profile if they have one. And I'll scroll all the way to the bottom. I'll open all the different accordions and I'll skim from the bottom up. I'll take a look at what did they study? What was their first job, second job, third job, et cetera. And it's both informative because if I do that enough, I can start seeing the hidden career maneuvers that people take to get to where they are today, depending on which field you're in. But I also get some relief in realizing that I've got some time ahead of me, that it takes about a decade to really feel some wind at your back in your career. And if I'm just coming out of school, I'm just getting started, which is both exciting and nerve-wracking. But it's exciting in the sense of you have so many different options ahead of you. You're just getting started. You're just building that human capital, your skills and knowledge, your social capital, your networks, and then your reputational capital in terms of who knows you and what they know you for. So take your time. These people that we're seeing at the face of companies and countries and headlines. These people took the same methodical steps as you'll be taking to get to where they are today. Of course, your career will look very different given where we are in the world, but it can still be informative to understand how people got to where they are today.
I love both of those answers, and I mean, I would say like I want to put them together in my brain because, I mean, you probably know, Scott. My second book was about change, called The Beauty of Discomfort, and the whole point of it was even when we know what we should do to affect good change, we know the answer, we don't do it because we're wired against it because we find it intolerable. And the idea is the discomfort we feel can actually be a signal to us that we're in an important place, and that actually it can become a guide that when we're feeling that way, we should slow down and pay attention. And I would say, to Gorick's point, it is different for young people. This is, however much our worlds were unpredictable and shifting, it is a new ball game for people who are just starting out because, of course, we don't even know. We can't even tell you what the jobs will be or won't be. And those young people are also wired for much faster answers and responses and serotonin and dopamine hits than we were. And so I actually think that muscle that Janet was talking about of slow down, like pause, let it sit in things a little bit is actually, if I could give one piece of advice to my own son, it's that because he's so wired to, get the next thing as quickly as possible. And change actually happens in the in-betweens. And so you actually do have to learn to pause a little bit. It's definitely a learned skill that anybody can do though.
And I think, what, building on that, Amanda, I love what you mentioned, like about how technology is wiring people's brains. And I think what ChatGPT, Google, but ChatGPT to an even greater extent, it is teaching people that there is a right answer to everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to know about X, you just go into ChatGPT and it'll give you one answer. And the reality is that most important things in life, there is not one right answer. Should I take
Right.
this job or should I take that job? Like there is no right answer. And I think that, as I said, too, people are being wired that there is one right answer. And school teaches us a lot this too, right? There's one right
Right.
answer. And if you get it right, you get a big check mark. And if you get it wrong, well, you're in trouble. And I think the reality is in life, it just doesn't work that way. I love my father who used to say when I was at decision points, he'd say, Janet, there's no right decision. What matters is what you make of those decisions, right? I.e., it's not about which job should I take and there's one is going to be the right answer and the other is going to be the wrong answer. No, actually what really matters is what you do after you take the job, and
Totally.
that will determine your success.
I love that. If I could add on as well, it seems like this is applicable both in your own life and in a specific job that you might have, where you might get into a job or a career and realize this is not what you want to do. And I think that's actually progress. It's great that you know what you don't want to do because it's getting you one step closer to figuring out what you do want to do. And to Janet's point about not just dwelling on what could be perceived as a mistake, but recovering from it, but moreover, realizing that when you're in the workplace, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And if you do make a mistake, oftentimes people are going to remember how you recover from that mistake, how you manage the people around that mistake. That's going to leave an even more indelible mark on people
Mm-hmm.
than the mistake itself. So know that it's normal and know that how you manage it can set the stage for a really positive reputation.
Another of one of the book's endorsers, Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, who's a great Canadian CEO of Xero, she has a great book called Choose Possibility. And in it, she talks about the myth of like the one big choice. And I think it's something that a lot of people, in particular young people, can get hung up by, that this one choice about whether to take this job or not this job will define their entire life. When as she argues, really, it's around 10,000 little and moderate risks and choices that we make that really shape our future. We have a question from the audience, and maybe this time to Gorick to get things kicked off. How do you balance the power of not knowing with the struggle of imposter syndrome? And in the context, imposter syndrome is a question that we hear all the time, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a great question. The way that I think about it, at least in the workplace, is to bring back a bit of what we learned in school that I think actually is useful, which is from math class, and specifically showing your work in math class. So I was never that great at math. And so what would I do? Well, if I don't know the answer to this math problem, I would scribble down a bunch of my work and show my work, and I would get partial credit. And it turns out that, at least in my observation, the workplace is the same way, where there's a C plus way of asking a question and an A plus way of asking a question. A C plus way of asking a question, maybe there's actually a C. The D plus way is to not ask questions at all. The C plus way is to say, I'm struggling. What do I do next? The A plus way is to say, I'm struggling with this. I've gone ahead and done this research and talked to this individual and tried this on my own. I know this, but I don't know this. Am I missing something, or should I go with path A or path B? I'm leaning towards path A for these reasons. Am I thinking about this the right way? So what am I doing here? It's the adulting version of showing your work in math class. And I found it helpful because people don't know how much you know. People don't know how much effort you've put in to a particular assignment. And people also don't know how thoughtful you are. So in bringing this all together, in showing your work and then asking for reactions, you're actually, number one, getting your question answered. Number two, showing what you don't know. And number three, when it comes to this imposter syndrome, you're towing this delicate line between being inquisitive while also showing that you have things under control, which is this very delicate balance of demonstrating your competence in the workplace.
I think imposter syndrome is one of the most human qualities people have, and it's such an unfortunate byproduct of success, especially early success. And yet, the answer to it can never be too much ego, too much bravado. I would go back to admit what you don't know, and I think you just heard from Gorick a really great strategy for how to do that. But just the sitting in, you're there for a reason. So you're not an imposter. There was no trickery unless you literally, perpetrated fraud on your CV or in the interview. So you have to own it a little bit, but you don't have to take it too far. You can actually admit where your vulnerabilities are. And I think people are much more open to that these days than they might have been in the past.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that because I think I hear from so many people that feel that they have an imposter syndrome. And to me, imposter syndrome is you go out and you do something great in the workplace, or you get a job, or you do something, and then there's that voice at the other end of the back of your mind saying you didn't really deserve this, or you just got lucky, or like how long until they find out that I'm actually not that great. But
Yeah.
I think the fact that somebody is asking about it and labeling it, they know that they have it. And so one analogy that I heard that I think might be helpful, I'll share, is that when you have that little voice in the back of your head saying, I can't do this, just how long is it going to be till people find out I don't really know what I'm talking about? Then just like imagine a little bird is sitting on your shoulder and is whispering those thoughts into your mind, right? And know, okay, you know what? That's a little bird on my shoulder. It's there because for hereditary reasons, we were always like told, double check, be cautious as human beings. So just sort of say, oh yeah, that's a little voice. That's a little bird. Bird, I hear you. I don't really need you right now. So here you can go, you can fly away, and I'm getting on with my life. Right? Instead of maybe I share that and maybe that's a little helpful for folks.
I love that. In The Uncertainty Advantage, I talk about the concept of a gremlin that is sometimes over your shoulder, and in some social situations can be kind of a pain. One final question to wrap things up, because we're going to close off the panel round in 2 or 3 minutes, is what is one piece of advice around uncertainty that you wish you knew at the beginning of your career?
I guess I'll start here. I mean, I would say, and this might just come with age, so this might be one that gets some eye rolls from somebody who's actually quite young and genuinely starting out. But none of it matters as much as you think. The things that end up mattering, if you're lucky, there are components of your work. And actually, as you choose your path, you want to align them. So the things you're good at, the things that you're passionate about, you should move as much as possible to be paid for those wherever you can. But at the end of the day, when you're kind of tallying up what makes me feel good, what contribution have I made, it's probably not the things you thought they were going to be when you were, 22, 24, starting out. It's certainly not the salary and the title and the office and any of that. It is sort of the work you did, the people you did it with, the impact you had. And so I think just sort of remembering that we do get sidetracked by things that aren't that important.
And I guess I would say it's the old adage, it's the journey that counts. And I think it's the same thing. That if you understand that, hey, it's the journey that counts, it's not the destination, then you can embrace uncertainty because you're flexible in terms of what destination you're going to, right? It's like, hey, if you know you're more or less heading north and you're enjoying the scenery and you're walking with great people and you're getting fitter every single day, like that's great. You don't need to know exactly where you're going because frankly, you don't even know what's going to happen. And tomorrow it may rain and then you won't be able to walk. And the next day it's going to be beautiful and you're going to start running and you're going to go twice as far. And you don't know what the scenery is going to be, but that's okay. Like it's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. And just know you're moving in the right direction. There's going to be lots of different opportunities or lots of different paths. And so just take time to like take a deep breath and enjoy it.
Building off of Janet's mental image of this hike, I can't help but think that career success comes down to luck, drive, and skill, where you could be on this hike and it can start raining. But even though that's not necessarily in your control, you still have the drive of keeping going, and you have the skill of packing well, planning well, and hiking well. And so when it comes to our careers, there's going to be a lot of luck that will be involved, and there will be some opportunities for you to create your own luck in terms of meeting people, in terms of taking on projects that build on your assets, your strengths, and your skills. But so much of it comes down to your skills and your drive. And it's unfortunate to see that a lot of people after school end up stagnating because there's no one there anymore to show them what to read, what to do, what to think, what to prioritize. So it's up to you now to become your own professor in this school of life. It's going to be up to you, but it's going to be an exciting one.
Lifelong learning is one of the most important things in an age of uncertainty. First off, I just want to say a huge thank you to the panelists. This has been a fantastic discussion, and a big thanks to each of you for supporting the uncertainty advantage. I'm truly appreciative. I also want to give a big thanks to everyone who participated in supporting the book, beta readers, my publisher, Dunder and Press. It takes a real community to create a book, and there's a lot of people who contributed to it, as well as a big thanks to my Venture for Canada colleagues for their support with this event. There will be a thank you email sent to all attendees in terms of a follow-up that goes through a bunch of details. We are going to be giving away three free copies of the book, and there will be a random draw, which will be communicated afterwards via email. And in terms of a few kind of closing things, the VFC team is going to put a link in the chat for any folks who are interested in making a donation to Venture for Canada. We are a registered Canadian charity, and if you're interested in supporting the work of Venture for Canada and helping young people, here is the link to make a donation. As well as if you're interested in learning more about the Uncertainty Advantage, you can check it out on Amazon, and the link will go there. Yeah, and in closing, I just want to say again, a huge thank you to the panelists, a huge thank you for everyone in joining in today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I wish you the best in thriving in our uncertain world. Thank you very much.